So we wanted revolution, not simply reform. We did not believe that racial justice could prevail under conditions of capitalism. And we were convinced that with our internationalism, we would bring down the structures of capitalism in the foreseeable future. Looking back on that era, I can say that I am extremely happy that I had the opportunity to experience that palpable certainty that a radical change was about to happen, even if we turned out to be wrong. And of course, you already know the outcome. The revolution didn't come. The revolution we were fighting for never really materialized in the way we had conceptualized it. In the process of fighting that unsuccessful revolution, we learned crucial lessons about the process of revolutionary change. And I think we helped to produce changes that have in many ways revolutionized the way we think about human relations and the planet we collectively inhabit. In the process of these struggles, questions emerged, many questions that helped to spawn new academic fields and new movements, but perhaps most importantly of all, new questions. First of all, the question regarding the relationship between racism and capitalism. Because I came to understand that if we assume the unquestioned centrality of the West, its economic, philosophical, and cultural development, then the economic modes, the intellectual histories, the religions and cultures associated with Africa, Asia, and indigenous people will never be acknowledged as significant dimensions of humanity. The very concept of humanity will always conceal an eternal and internal clandestine racialization, forever foreclosing possibilities of racial equality. Cedric Robinson's analyses, which in a sense are both an embracing of and a critique of the Enlightenment context of Marxism. It revealed new ways of thinking and acting precisely through encounters between Marxism and Black intellectuals and activists who helped to constitute what Robinson called, and others such as Robin Kelley and many others have called, the Black radical tradition. Although Eric Williams' book, Capitalism and Slavery, was published in 1944, and now you know that that was the same year I was born, thanks to the introduction. The text, Capitalism and Slavery, was pretty much marginalized. And as a result, scholarly efforts exploring the relationship between racism and capitalism have remained relatively marginal, which is very bizarre, since capitalism would not exist without slavery, without colonization. And while it is important to acknowledge the pivotal role slavery and colonization played in the historical consolidation of capitalism, more recent developments linked to global capitalism cannot be adequately comprehended if the racial dimension of capitalism is ignored. So I make this point because the term that Cedric Robinson used is racial capitalism, that capitalism is racial capitalism. It is impossible to begin to understand the workings of capitalism without recognizing that racism resides at its very core. So this means that we have to take very seriously the fact that histories of colonialism and slavery cannot simply be relegated to the past as moments that can be transcended by attempting to assimilate Black subjects and subjects from the global South into an unchanged Enlightenment-based discourse of human equality. And this, of course, is what we have experienced. This is the perennial problem in the US. The assumption that racism is addressed by simply assimilating those who have been targeted by racism into a society that remains as racist as it was to begin with. The point I'm trying to make is that revolutionary change is impossible as long as we do not address the extent to which repressive apparatuses, police, prisons, etc., and the social structures preserve these racialized and racist histories. I guess I'm suggesting also that the Enlightenment imperative of progress, that we always look toward future progress. And the West, the countries of the global North, come to symbolize that progress, which places Africa, other countries in the global South at a great disadvantage. But if we assent to that imperative of always looking toward future progress, it prevents us from seriously engaging with the past. Now, I think about white people in the US who try to excuse themselves from responsibility for the continued reproduction of racist structures and discourses by saying, "But I never owned slaves," or "I never attacked Native Americans," or "I never joined the Ku Klux Klan." This simplistic, neoliberal, individualistic notion of responsibility that denies the impact of history is precisely the reason why so many historical conjunctures in the US have been defined by racial explosions. Now, revolutions are always made by the youth. And those of us who are older have to learn how to take leadership from young people. And I always say it's a wonderful time to be young, this period, because so many changes. But also, it's a great time to be old, because one gets to see the fruits of the work one has done for decades and decades in the ability of young people to engage the issues that we groped our way towards understanding with such facility. And I say this because I see a new feminist-inflected internationalism in Black activism that highlights the value of queer theories and practices. And I also see a structure of leadership which challenges the conventional masculinist, individualistic, charismatic notion of leadership that we've had to deal with for as long as I know. And so I want to conclude by suggesting that our notion of revolution, our notions of revolution, need to be far more capacious than they have been in the past. Certainly, we need to dispose of what has become an unmanageable system of global capitalism that permits the 8 richest billionaires in the world to control as much wealth as the poorest half of the population. That is absolutely obscene. And even those billionaires should think that it's obscene. But also recognize that we must be prepared to continually challenge that which appears to us to be most normal. Revolution upsets normative processes, class-based, gender-based, race-based, sexuality-based, ability-based, and I'm just beginning the list. And in this sense, there will always be revolutions looming in the future. Thank you very much.